Hi, I'm Louise, and this is my story of the dementia journey with my mother, Valerie. I guess Mum's health problems started towards her late 70s, and she started with a tremor, which was subsequently diagnosed as Parkinson's. And she managed very well until she had quite a nasty fall, which resulted in surgery, and really the decision being made that Mum needed more support than she had. So, difficult decision within the family. We decided to move Mum over to where we were living. Unfortunately, she couldn't live with us because we were in a 3-storey house and she couldn't manage the stairs. So we found her a beautiful apartment by the canal, where we were on hand to actually provide her far more support than she'd had living alone. It was quite a difficult decision in terms of impact on my family, because at the time I was earning quite a good salary, and it meant that I had to step back from my career and actually dedicate my time to supporting and caring for Mum, which had a financial impact. Unfortunately, these things do. But it was the right decision to make, and initially it was great, and it was lovely actually to spend some quality time with Mum. We hadn't done that for many years. But unfortunately, Mum's health declined probably over about a period of 12 months. And I guess the biggest problem was when she fell and broke a hip. And that really seemed to be the start of a quite a rapid decline. I found caring for her quite difficult. Previously, I'd been doing all of the shopping, quite a lot of cooking, I'd been doing her cleaning, taking her to all her medical appointments. But once she'd broken her hip, far more difficult issues started to arise. Mum had always been incredibly proud and quite a private person. So things like showering and washing, it didn't feel a comfortable thing either for me or for her really. So when Mum came out of hospital after the hip surgery, we started to use carers, and unfortunately there is very little support financially, so everything that you need to do you have to finance yourself. So we started off with 1 carer a day, and unfortunately as Mum's health deteriorated, that increased to 2 and then 3. I was very conscious that physically I wasn't able to do a lot of the things for Mum which she needed. I guess I started to notice some of Mum's behaviour changing, which was when I started to worry that maybe it was more than just Parkinson's. And a visit to the GP culminated in a recommendation for a memory test, which I guess I was quite scared that my worst fears would be confirmed, which they were. However, it was actually quite a funny experience. I hadn't told Mum where we were going, so when the nurse asked her if she knew why she was here, she said, "Well, I don't even know where I am," which broke the ice to start with, which was quite funny. And it was really alarming because some of the answers to the questions were barking, to be quite honest. And it's awful. It's like a child. You're trying to say, please, willing her to actually give the right answers. But what was really funny, this is a number of years ago, but the nurse asked Mum if she knew who the Prime Minister was, and Mum was quite indignant, and she said, "Oh, it's Mrs. May." I'm thinking, great. And she said, do you know who the President of the United States is? And she said, "Yes, it's that stupid twonk, Trump." At which point we all started to laugh. So even though the dementia had set in, there were still those moments of humour and I guess and clarity. So So yeah, unfortunately, we got the diagnosis that Mum had a mixture of dementias, Alzheimer's and vascular dementia, and exacerbated by the Parkinson's as well. Her physical health had deteriorated. Her mobility, was pretty poor, and the role as carer became more and more challenging for me personally. I had very little support apart from my husband and my daughter, but apart from that, there was really no other assistance offered to me. Again, anything that you need has to be funded, paid for, and it felt very, very lonely. I was very frustrated. I felt very lonely. I felt overwhelmed at times. And I think one of the saddest things is the point at which you realise that the dynamic of your relationship has changed from parent and child to the child now becoming the parent. And when you've had a mum who is a very strong, capable, intelligent woman who then becomes very, very dependent on you, that is a huge point in that journey at which you realise the overwhelming nature of that burden of care. And I use that word burden because at times that was how it felt. And guilt. I think the overwhelming emotion I felt throughout the whole process, and even 4 years on now, I still feel guilt, is that I couldn't do enough to help and support her. Unfortunately, things weren't going to get any better. That's another sad thing with dementia. There is only one conclusion. And as Mum's health deteriorated, she continued to have more and more falls. One day I'd gone down 5 times in 12 hours and had to pick her up off the floor. You know, and as a 60-year-old woman at the time, it was very difficult physically to actually, you know, manage Mum. And unfortunately, I was advised that she really needed more care than I was able to provide for her, even having 4 carers a day. So we found a fabulous sheltered apartment for her, where there was on-site care 24 hours a day. She had her own space, which was really important to my mum. She was quite a private person, but they managed her medication, they showered her, they made her food, but it meant that I could actually spend time with Mum as her daughter rather than as her carer, which seemed to be a great option. However, after only a couple of weeks, I started to get a phone call every week, usually about 9-10 o'clock on a Saturday or Sunday night, to say, Mum's on the floor, we've called the ambulance. And that would then result in probably 7 or 8 hours at A&E, and a very, very lonely place. And fortunately, I was there to be Mum's advocate, because sadly, as an older woman with dementia, you know, you're not a priority. You're not somebody screaming for attention. Mum was, even with dementia, very courteous. And always very, very grateful for, you know, the medical attention she received. So sadly, after a period of about 6 weeks, the sheltered accommodation said she really does need far more care than even we can provide. So sadly, once again, really the decision was made for me. Discussed it with the rest of the family, and we decided that the only way forward for quality of care and safety of Mum was to move her into a care home. I did have the decision where to place her, and we found a beautiful care home where she'd actually had a couple of weeks respite, which meant my husband and I could go on holiday. And we managed to place her in there. It was a beautiful old vicarage in Parbold, surrounded by a beautiful countryside, a lovely room with a beautiful outlook. Unfortunately, what nobody knew at that point was that only a matter of weeks later, we would go into lockdown. And that was something which nobody could really foresee. And I think the ramifications of that are still ongoing. Ultimately, about 7 or 8 weeks after we'd put Mum into the care home, we went into lockdown, and I actually never saw Mum again, apart from through a window. And sadly, 2 weeks before the care home opened up again, she passed away very quietly, very peacefully in her sleep. But unfortunately, I wasn't there to be able to hold her hand at that point. It had been a long and very painful journey and experience for all of us, really. And sadly, the guilt of having made the decision to place Mum into care for her own safety, and then ultimately being denied those last 11 months of her life, have stayed with me. The guilt, I have to say anger, can't be underestimated. I guess on reflection, if I were to give advice to anybody who's starting this very difficult journey with a loved one with dementia, is there are magical moments during some very difficult times, and enjoy those and make the most of them. One of my most precious memories is not long before Mum went into the care home, we went to a wonderful afternoon concert at the Philharmonic, where the Liverpool Phil played Mum's favourite piece of music, which was Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto. And it was a very, very difficult trip. She was quite immobile and trying to calm her sufficiently to enjoy the concert. And at one point she turned to me, and for the first time in such a long time, she actually had expression in her eyes. Instead of that blank look, she turned to me and her eyes were actually filled with just the sheer joy of hearing that music. And for that one look, it was worth all of the difficulty of getting her there. Unfortunately, the next piece of music they played, she had a complete meltdown, and we had to have some help getting her out with security. But you've got to cherish those memories. And the other thing I found quite difficult after Mum had passed, I really struggled to remember this wonderful person that she'd been before the dementia robbed her of all those things. And it took me some time, and I have to say some counselling, to actually recover those wonderful memories of my mum as the person that she was, not the funny little creature that she became with this awful affliction of dementia. I miss her lots, and what I do to try and, I guess, honour her memory, I volunteer for a dementia carers group in my village, where for 2 hours a week we look after the cared for. We keep them safe, we keep them entertained, so their carers can have 2 hours of respite with each other, supporting each other. We also have guest speakers. And I guess because when I was in their position, I really had no help or support apart from my immediate family. So, as I say, to honour my mum, I like to try and help with people with dementia.